This girl is the queen of the #1 girls' school in all of South Korea. Beautiful, kind, and wealthy. The amount of money she donates to the school every year is enough to buy the entire institution. All her classmates long to befriend her, and some are even willing to pay a hefty sum just to sit next to her. However, among a group of wealthy heiresses, she chooses the poorest girl in the school as her deskmate. Everyone is curious. What kind of charm does this girl, who wears a rural school uniform, possess? Her name is Seul Gi. Since childhood, she has had no sense of presence. When she was 5 years old, she attended a school-organized exchange event, but because she wasn't wearing a uniform, she was forgotten on the beach and became a lost child. She was sent to an orphanage, where she remained unnoticed. If her classmates didn't remind her to eat, she would go hungry. The kitchen auntie never remembered to set aside a meal for her. She drifted through life like this until she turned 18. Although she had come of age, her orphan status prevented her from finding a regular job. Fortunately, a kind senior introduced her to a part-time job, which turned out to involve using a fake ID to buy prescription drugs. However, this experience unexpectedly changed Seul Gi's life. After completing one of these tasks, the senior suddenly asked her about her dreams. Seul Gi was taken aback. She had never thought about this before. The senior sneered, then handed her a pack of pills, saying that these were something the wealthy in Gangnam fought to buy. Finally, he hinted to her, "If you don't want to keep living like this, then from now on, study hard." For some reason, these words, spoken by someone so unreliable, held an inexplicable persuasiveness. Seul Gi began to study diligently, rising from the bottom of the class to rank 15th in the school. As her grades improved, she noticed that the kitchen auntie started paying attention to her, even bringing her a warm, late-night meal. This kindness made Seul Gi wonder, if she became the top student, would she be treated even better? Determined to push herself further, she took out the pack of pills the senior had given her and swallowed them in one go. These pills were truly something special. After taking them, she could focus intensely, and her mind had never felt so clear. In this state, she secured the #1 spot in the school on the second exam. Even the bullies who used to target her no longer dared to lay a hand on her. Having tasted the benefits of being at the top, Seul Gi became even more determined to maintain her ranking. At the same time, she grew increasingly dependent on the effects of the drug, to the point where she secretly stockpiled pills while working part-time. Not long after, the orphanage found Seul Gi's biological father. She quit her part-time job and went to Seoul to reunite with him. 4 months later, Seul Gi transferred to the #1 girls' school in South Korea. On her first day, she arrived at the school in an old red uniform, dragging a suitcase to complete her enrollment procedures. As soon as she stepped onto the campus, she immediately sensed that the atmosphere here was entirely different from her previous school. The homeroom teacher took one look at her and simply told her to find her own classroom. Seul Gi pulled her suitcase along, asking for directions, but in this high school where everyone carried Chanel bags, no one paid her any attention. By chance, she walked into the auditorium where the opening ceremony was taking place. The hall was chaotic, and even an old woman was inside selling flowers. Just as the crowd was trying to drive the old woman away, a girl suddenly stepped forward and announced that she would buy all the flowers. Seul Gi quietly stood to the side, watching as the girl purchased the flowers. Then, the girl walked up to the stage, and the previously noisy auditorium fell silent. She introduced herself as Yoo Je I, and then began to host the ceremony in fluent English. The audience below, including the teachers, listened in complete silence. Seeing this, Seul Gi immediately understood. Yoo Je I was undoubtedly the one at the pinnacle of this school. However, what Seul Gi did not expect was that Yoo Je I was in the same class as her. The homeroom teacher warmly greeted her and told her she could choose anyone as her deskmate. The students in the room immediately became excited, hoping to be chosen by their goddess. Yoo Je I, like a queen, walked around the classroom twice, carefully observing the eager eyes fixed on her. Finally, to everyone's surprise, she sat down next to the seemingly ordinary and out-of-place transfer student. "Hello, my name is Yoo Je I. I know, I just heard earlier." After class, a few students approached Seul Gi and took turns making offers to buy her seat. Seul Gi remained indifferent. She only cared about sitting as close to the teacher's desk as possible. In the end, she agreed to exchange seats with a girl sitting in the middle of the classroom. After the exchange was complete, Yoo Je I suddenly burst into the room, looking for her deskmate to go eat together. The girl who had taken Seul Gi's old seat excitedly looked at Yoo Je I, thinking she had become the new deskmate. But to her shock, Yoo Je I grabbed Seul Gi's hand. "Let's go. I'm starving." This countryside girl stepped into the elite girls' school and immediately found herself in a Mary Sue scenario. The queen of the school not only personally chose her as a deskmate but also allowed her to join her close friend group. Yoo Je I's two best friends stared at Seul Gi in confusion, unable to understand why she was letting a poor transfer student into their circle. In reality, Seul Gi shared the same question. However, as the conversation unfolded, she quickly realized Yoo Je I's true intent. She wanted to know about Seul Gi's university aspirations and academic achievements. Yoo Je I revealed that her goal was to study medicine at Seoul National University, as she wished to fulfill her father's last wish. Then, she eagerly asked Seul Gi if she was also aiming for Seoul National University because she had noticed the university's keychain hanging on Seul Gi's bag. In truth, Seul Gi didn't want anyone to know her aspirations, fearing they would mock her for being overly ambitious. The conversation continued, and the friends asked Seul Gi where she attended cram school. Seul Gi hesitantly admitted that she had never taken extra classes, which left them completely stunned. After all, no one in the school went without tutoring. Even Yoo Je I, who practically had one foot in Seoul National University already, was attending 3 advanced math classes. Now, it was Seul Gi's turn to be shocked. But what came next startled her even more. She discovered that these students, just like her, were using a mysterious drug to enhance their cognitive abilities. Panic surged within her as she suddenly felt like the drug she had relied on had lost its effect. How was she supposed to compete with these wealthy heiresses, who not only had top-tier tutors, but were also using secret supplements to secure their place at Seoul National University? After lunch, Seul Gi returned to the classroom to pack her things, preparing to switch seats with the other girl. At that moment, another classmate warned her not to change seats without Yoo Je I's permission, adding that those chosen by Yoo Je I would never have a peaceful day. However, Seul Gi dismissed the warning and quickly switched seats. When Yoo Je I returned and saw what had happened, she asked why Seul Gi had moved. Seul Gi explained that she was nearsighted and wanted to sit closer to the teacher's desk. "You should have told me. We could have switched seats together instead. See on high, we shouldn't trouble the others," she added, turning back to her original seat. Seul Gi observed closely but saw no sign of dissatisfaction on Yoo Je I's face. Thinking the matter had passed, she didn't dwell on it further. The long and turbulent first day of school finally came to an end. When she got home, Seul Gi immediately went on a second-hand marketplace website to buy a school uniform. After negotiating with the seller, she went to the designated meeting point to make the exchange. Upon receiving the uniform, she rushed straight to the laundromat, intending to wash it immediately. To her disgust, the uniform was stained with an unknown liquid, and inside the pocket, she found an opened condom wrapper. Horrified, she threw the uniform into the washing machine without hesitation. The next day, Seul Gi arrived at school wearing the freshly cleaned uniform. However, she soon noticed that her classmates were all looking at her with strange expressions. Then, Yoo Je I's new desk mate deliberately spilled ketchup on her shirt. "I can still smell the scent of semen on your uniform," she sneered. "Just because you get to be around Yoo Je I, do you think you're some kind of Cinderella?" The surrounding students joined in with mocking laughter, and at that moment, memories of past bullying flooded back to Seul Gi. She finally understood the warning from before. Those chosen by Yoo Je I would never have a peaceful day. Feeling suffocated, she ran to the restroom to scrub the stain from her shirt. Unexpectedly, Yoo Je I followed her and offered her own shirt for Seul Gi to change into. "Wow, Seul Gi fits into my clothes perfectly," Yoo Je I said with a smile. Fearing that any interaction with Yoo Je I would bring her more trouble, Seul Gi firmly pushed her away and kept her distance. Yoo Je I didn't force her. Instead, she casually tossed the stained shirt into the trash before slamming the door and leaving. After washing her clothes and returning to class, Seul Gi was caught off guard when the homeroom teacher suddenly handed out a math test, giving the class only 20 minutes to complete it. Seul Gi realized that the problems on the test were completely unfamiliar to her. Panicking, she only managed to solve 4 questions. Meanwhile, Yoo Je I and several other students effortlessly achieved perfect scores. After class, Seul Gi rushed to ask the teacher for the correct answers. However, the teacher explained that the test was used to evaluate students attending external cram schools, and the answers would only be discussed in those classes. Seul Gi was completely dumbfounded. In other words, if she didn't enroll in a cram school, she would inevitably fall behind. Because of extra classes, Seul Gi became confused. During lunch, she noticed her classmates holding their phones and talking about her. Seul Gi couldn't take it anymore. She threw down her lunch tray and grabbed a classmate's phone to check. It turned out that someone had posted about her buying a second-hand uniform online. Self-proclaimed former students of the school had left harsh insults in the comments. Seul Gi felt helpless. She had no idea who had secretly followed and taken pictures of her. She could only pretend as if nothing had happened. After school, she went to nearby tutoring centers to inquire about tuition fees. The prices were so expensive that she nearly fainted, so she took a flyer and prepared to leave. However, as she passed by a classroom, she saw the teacher explaining the answers to today's test. On impulse, she took out her phone, intending to record a video, but was caught on the spot by the admissions teacher. The teacher treated her as if she were sneaking in to attend the class for free and chased after her relentlessly. While Seul Gi was waiting for the elevator, she was almost caught by the teacher. Luckily, Yoo Je I, who had just arrived for her extra class, saw her. Yoo Je I handed her hat to Seul Gi and told her to hide on the rooftop, saying that way the teacher wouldn't be able to catch her. Seul Gi quickly ran up to the rooftop to hide. A while later, it started to rain. In the distance, she heard the sound of a door opening and footsteps approaching. Afraid that it was the teacher, Seul Gi lowered her head to cover her face. Yoo Je I then took off Seul Gi's hat. Looking at the sweet girl in front of her, Seul Gi wondered, was she an angel or a devil? Yoo Je I pulled Seul Gi straight to her family's hospital. Seul Gi followed behind, bewildered. Yoo Je I led her into the elevator and down to the basement. The luxurious and well-equipped interior left Seul Gi glancing around in awe, while Yoo Je I sat comfortably in a chair as a nurse examined her. Seul Gi looked at Yoo Je I with some confusion until she saw the nurse hand her a few pills and instruct her to rest well that night to be in the best condition. Only then did Seul Gi realize Yoo Je I was preparing for her tutoring session. She couldn't help but marvel at how poverty had truly limited her imagination. Next, Yoo Je I led Seul Gi to the tutoring room. While Seul Gi was looking around, Yoo Je I opened a locker and took out a brand new school uniform that had been prepared in advance. She handed it to Seul Gi. You won't reject my kindness again, will you? Why are you being so nice to me? Put on the clothes and I'll answer your question, Yoo Je I said before unbuttoning Seul Gi's old uniform. Seul Gi couldn't refuse. When Yoo Je I removed Seul Gi's shirt, she noticed a scar hidden beneath the collar, an old wound from past bullying. Yoo Je I didn't ask any questions, as if she had already guessed the story behind it. The new uniform fit Seul Gi perfectly. How did you know my size? I hugged you before. Actually, I wanted to get you new shoes too, but they say if you gift someone shoes, they'll run away, Yoo Je I replied with a playful smile. At this moment, Seul Gi was still curious. Why was Yoo Je I so kind to her? Because I respect you, Yoo Je I admitted. I actually know everything. Back at your old school, you never missed being number one. She was curious about Seul Gi's study methods, how she managed to be the top student without private tutoring. Seul Gi hadn't expected that to be the reason. She explained that she was only able to top her small-town school. Now that she was in Seoul, without any tutoring, she couldn't even understand the test questions. Yoo Je I smiled and handed Seul Gi a set of test papers from the tutoring class. She wanted to make a deal. She would give Seul Gi all the test materials from the tutoring center, and in return, Seul Gi had to explain her study methods in detail. While Seul Gi was still considering this beneficial offer, the voices of Yoo Je I's two best friends suddenly echoed from outside. Yoo Je I quickly hid the clothes and pulled Seul Gi into a locker. The two girls entered the study room and immediately started bad-mouthing Yoo Je I and Seul Gi. They mocked Seul Gi, calling her Yoo Je I's new servant. The girl with long hair sneered, "She's such a weirdo." Hearing this, Yoo Je I hurriedly covered Seul Gi's ears. The long-haired girl continued, "I saw in Seul Gi's records that her father passed away, but her mother is much younger than him. She's probably some illegitimate child with an unknown background." As these malicious speculations went on, Yoo Je I smiled at Seul Gi, making sure she didn't hear any of it. Suddenly, Seul Gi's phone vibrated. The two girls turned towards the noise and were about to open the locker. Thinking fast, Yoo Je I sent a message, skillfully diverting their attention. After they left, Yoo Je I took Seul Gi out of the hospital using a private elevator. To express her gratitude, Seul Gi gifted Yoo Je I her cherished Seoul National University keychain. However, instead of leaving immediately, Seul Gi went to the hospital's funeral hall. She recalled that 4 months ago she had finally found the father she had been separated from for 13 years. But before she could even call him Dad, a strange accident took his life, leaving them forever apart. Seul Gi and her stepmother handled the funeral together. Her father's funeral was held at this very hospital. On the day of the ceremony, his attending physician also came to pay his respects. Seul Gi had wanted to ask the doctor about her father, but then she saw the man embracing his daughter affectionately. Later, when Seul Gi transferred to her new school, she discovered that the doctor's daughter was none other than Yoo Je I. Yoo Je I wasn't just rich. She was the queen of the school. Seul Gi envied everything Yoo Je I had. Now that Yoo Je I was extending an olive branch, Seul Gi thought that perhaps she could use this opportunity to change her fate. Taking the tutoring test papers Yoo Je I had given her, she began studying. However, after flipping through them for a while, she didn't even know where to start. In the end, she had no choice but to rely on the mysterious pills to clear her mind. The effects were immediate. She quickly focused and immersed herself in studying. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Yoo Je I and her two best friends had finished their tutoring session. Yoo Je I's father personally drove them home. On the way, the two friends used the excuse of shopping to get out of the car early. They didn't like being around Yoo Je I's father, as he always made them uncomfortable. After they left, Yoo Je I's father suddenly asked about Seul Gi. "I heard she's very smart. I'm worried she might surpass you." Yoo Je I replied, It's not something you need to worry about, Dad." Hearing this, her father was finally satisfied and fell silent. The next day, when Seul Gi arrived at class, she learned that Yoo Je I's deskmate was absent for some unknown reason. After school, Seul Gi packed her things and returned to Yoo Je I's side. "Je Yi, can I sit here?" Yoo Je I, of course, agreed. So, with Seul Gi back by Yoo Je I's side, the most anxious person was Yoo Je I's short-haired friend. This was because Yoo Je I had once promised to nominate her as class president. However, now that Yoo Je I and Seul Gi were so close, she worried that Yoo Je I would nominate Seul Gi instead. Her worries soon became reality. During the afternoon class meeting, Yoo Je I indeed nominated Seul Gi for class president. Her words practically guaranteed that Seul Gi would take the position. However, to maintain fairness, the homeroom teacher still held a vote for formality's sake. As expected, Seul Gi received the highest number of votes and became the class president, while the short-haired girl came in second with only a few votes less. Unwilling to accept the result, the short-haired girl rushed to the podium to inspect the ballots. She discovered that several ballots had identical handwriting, and suspected that someone had tampered with the votes to help Seul Gi win. Seul Gi challenged her to name the culprit outright, but the girl was at a loss for words. No matter how frustrated she was, she didn't dare expose Yoo Je I's little trick in front of everyone. In the end, she had no choice but to accept the position of vice president. However, Yoo Je I still didn't let her off the hook. She demanded that the short-haired girl apologize to both the class and the class president. Already at a disadvantage, she could only grit her teeth and apologize to Seul Gi and the entire class. From that moment on, Seul Gi officially assumed her role as class president. That evening, just as Seul Gi arrived home, Yoo Je I called her, asking her to treat her to a celebration for becoming class president. Seul Gi didn't refuse, and arranged to meet Yoo Je I at a karaoke bar. Seul Gi arrived first and began singing. Yoo Je I came a bit later and joined her. Seeing Yoo Je I show up, Seul Gi was deeply surprised because ever since childhood, she had always been forgotten. Whenever she waited for someone, she was always met with emptiness. However, Yoo Je I told her, "I may be late, but if I've made a promise to you, I'll definitely show up." Hearing this, Seul Gi was overwhelmed with emotions. After that, Yoo Je I invited Seul Gi to sleep over at her house. Seul Gi hesitated, but Yoo Je I had already grabbed her and taken her home. Yoo Je I's house was so large that one couldn't see the end of it. As soon as they went upstairs, they encountered Yoo Je I's dog, and Seul Gi learned that Yoo Je I also had an older sister. Yoo Je I then led Seul Gi to her room. The room resembled a deep ocean, quiet and dreamy. It was the kind of room Seul Gi had always dreamed of having. At that moment, Yoo Je I's dog brought in a princess dress. Seeing the dress, memories flooded back to Seul Gi, and she was deeply moved. She shared with Yoo Je I a story from her childhood, about how she had gotten lost. "But that wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault at all. It was the adult's responsibility to check the number of children. Thank you for sharing such a difficult story with me." Yoo Je I's comforting words lifted a weight off Seul Gi's heart. Time passed quickly, and before they knew it, it was late at night. Yoo Je I removed her jacket and invited Seul Gi to take a bath together. Seul Gi had never bathed with anyone before. She was so embarrassed that she didn't know where to look. "Why is your face so red?" being asked, that Seul Gi became so flustered that she couldn't respond. "Don't tell me you're thinking of something weird? What weird thing?" "Like this." After bathing, the two lay down to sleep together, but Seul Gi couldn't sleep. Her heart was restless. Meanwhile, the short-haired girl was still fuming over the class president incident. She wasn't willing to let it go. She examined the ballots again, hoping to find solid proof that Yoo Je I had rigged the votes for Seul Gi. Just then, her mother arrived home from work, startling her. After her mother left the room, she accidentally noticed a legal document. Her mother had brought back a lawsuit regarding a case of infant swapping. The defendant was none other than Yoo Je I's father. Her eyes lit up instantly. This could be a weakness she could use against Yoo Je I. At the same time, her long-haired friend shared some information she had discovered. She had looked into Yoo Je I's former seatmate and found out that, for some unknown reason, their entire family had abruptly moved away. The long-haired girl was convinced that this must be connected to Yoo Je I. Back at Yoo Je I's house, Seul Gi still couldn't sleep. She accidentally saw Yoo Je I's phone light up with a new message. Glancing at it, she realized it was from Yoo Je I's former seatmate. The message read, "I will apologize to Seul Gi and transfer schools immediately. Please, I beg you, delete the video." Seeing this, Seul Gi started to panic. Did Yoo Je I also have a video of her? Anxious, she picked up Yoo Je I's phone and secretly checked it. As she scrolled through the messages, her eyes widened in shock. This was the first time the wealthy top student Yoo Je I had placed second. She received a 90 on her 800-word essay, while the perfect score went to her new deskmate, a transfer student from the countryside. The moment the teacher announced the scores, the group of rich girls in the class gasped in astonishment and immediately demanded the teacher read Seul Gi's essay aloud. However, the teacher refused on the spot, stating the essay's content was personal and not appropriate for public reading. After class, Yoo Je I couldn't contain her curiosity and asked Seul Gi what she had written. Seul Gi simply replied it was nothing special and changed the subject. In truth, Seul Gi's essay detailed her pitiful circumstances, something Yoo Je I had known about even before Seul Gi transferred. The previous night, while sleeping over at Yoo Je I's house, Seul Gi had accidentally discovered a trove of personal information about her and her parents on Yoo Je I's phone. This included her father's resume, all of Seul Gi's test scores, and even a missing person flyer from when Seul Gi was lost as a child. In other words, Yoo Je I possessed a comprehensive collection of information about Seul Gi and her family. This discovery shocked Seul Gi, leaving her confused about Yoo Je I's motives and how she acquired these documents. Continuing to scroll through the phone, Seul Gi stumbled upon a video of Yoo Je I threatening a former classmate. In the video, Yoo Je I threatened to expose the girl's drug use, causing the terrified girl to plead for mercy, unsure of how she had offended Yoo Je I. "See, why are you so nosy, touching my things without permission?" Yoo Je I said, promising to delete the video if the girl transferred schools. Seul Gi was horrified after watching the video. She transferred the photos and videos to her own phone and quietly left Yoo Je I's house in the middle of the night. The next morning, Yoo Je I woke up to find Seul Gi gone, but remained unfazed. She had secretly installed a tracker on Seul Gi's phone and knew her location. However, upon arriving at school, she noticed Seul Gi seemed upset and rushed to ask why she had left without a word. Seul Gi made up an excuse about her mother suddenly calling her home. Arriving at the office, they encountered Yoo Je I's former classmate completing transfer paperwork. Wanting to gauge Yoo Je I's reaction, Seul Gi suggested they say goodbye. To her surprise, Yoo Je I acted as if nothing had happened, politely bidding farewell to the girl and her mother. Back in class, the literature teacher handed back the essays. Knowing Seul Gi usually received the highest mark, Yoo Je I's short-haired friend urged everyone to ask Seul Gi to share her essay. Seul Gi ignored her and put her essay away. However, upon returning to class after lunch, Seul Gi discovered her essay was missing. Yoo Je I immediately rallied everyone to search for it. They then discovered that each of them had a copy of the essay in their desks and curiously began reading. Upon seeing this, Yoo Je I quickly collected all the copies. After reading the essay, Yoo Je I angrily declared someone must have deliberately distributed it and vowed to help Seul Gi find the culprit. Seul Gi calmly asked Yoo Je I why she was so angry. Before Yoo Je I could explain, Seul Gi exposed her as the one who had distributed the copies. "How does it feel to have your private collection, about my unfortunate childhood, exposed like this?" Seul Gi then showed Yoo Je I the photos and videos she had saved the previous night. Upon seeing the video, Yoo Je I realized Seul Gi had deliberately tested her at the office. However, Yoo Je I seemed unconcerned, even suggesting she had helped Seul Gi get rid of a bully. Seul Gi retorted that what she really wanted to know was why Yoo Je I had her father's belongings and documents, and whether Yoo Je I had anything to do with his death. Korean high school students were obsessed with academics. To achieve high scores on midterms, some popped brain-boosting pills like candy, while others even resorted to surgery to stop their menstrual cycles. Seul Gi, however, had run out of her brain-boosting medication. Without them, she couldn't perform at her best. The only person who could help her get more was Yoo Je I, but ironically, they had just had a falling out. Seul Gi confronted Yoo Je I, demanding to know how she obtained all her personal information. Yoo Je I refused to explain. Seeing Yoo Je I's smugness, Seul Gi revealed that she had planted the copies of her essay herself, intentionally exposing her pitiful circumstances to everyone. This was unexpected, and precisely Seul Gi's point, to prove Yoo Je I didn't understand her at all. The essay spread throughout the class, sparking gossip about Seul Gi's situation. The short-haired girl, who disliked Seul Gi, used this opportunity to lure her out of the classroom. Seul Gi directly asked what she wanted. The girl revealed she knew Seul Gi's father had been a test writer for the school, and that he had died at Yoo Je I's family's hospital. More importantly, she knew Seul Gi's stepmother was suing Yoo Je I's father for malpractice, alleging he was responsible for Seul Gi's father's death. Seul Gi was stunned, completely unaware of the lawsuit. The girl explained her mother was the lawyer handling the case. She further speculated that Yoo Je I's father had orchestrated Yoo Je I's approach to Seul Gi to propose a settlement at the opportune moment. "So he needs my affection, huh?" "Hi, you're Yoo Je I know. Come here, Seul Gi," she mocked. Just then, the short-haired girl experienced menstrual cramps. She asked Seul Gi for pain medication, but Seul Gi claimed she never used any because she couldn't afford them. Instead, Seul Gi held her hand and massaged it. Feeling Seul Gi's warmth, they reconciled and became friends. At that moment, Yoo Je I texted Seul Gi, demanding a meeting and threatening her with regret if she didn't come. Seul Gi ignored the threat and went home. There, she wanted to ask her stepmother about the lawsuit but hesitated. The next day, while her stepmother was out, Seul Gi searched the house, eventually finding a life insurance policy worth 5 billion won. She said nothing and put it back. The following day at school, the teacher announced the midterm schedule. Seul Gi panicked, knowing the test would be based on supplementary materials from a private tutoring class. But having just fought with Yoo Je I, how could she get the materials and pass the exam? Adding to her stress, Seul Gi discovered she was completely out of brain-boosting pills. Without them, she had even less confidence. She searched pharmacies but couldn't buy them without a prescription. Desperate, Seul Gi turned to the internet, surprisingly finding a seller. However, the seller required a code. Noticing the seller's avatar was a paper crane, Seul Gi remembered a classmate who had given her a similar one. She opened it, finding a number sequence inside. She sent it, and it matched the code, allowing her to contact the seller, who instructed her to leave the money in a nearby locker in an hour. To her shock, the seller turned out to be her classmate. However, this girl was just a middleman. The real supplier was someone else. Seul Gi arrived at the locker as instructed. To her utter astonishment, the supplier was Yoo Je I. I had a hunch. It really is Woo Seul Gi. Are these little study tricks all you have? A bit disappointing, isn't it? No, it's not like that. Meeting clients like this is not allowed. It causes trouble for both of us. Let's just pretend we never met, okay? It'll be better that way. Before leaving, Yoo Je I even mentioned Seul Gi's usual medication was out of stock and that she had prepared a stronger one. Feeling uneasy, Seul Gi chased after her to return the pills. Yoo Je I taunted her, saying without the pills and the supplementary materials, passing the exam would be impossible. Seul Gi hesitated. Yoo Je I circled her on a skateboard. Seeing Seul Gi's dilemma, she offered a deal. If Seul Gi outscored her on the midterm, she would reveal her reasons for collecting Seul Gi's information. This seemed effective. Seul Gi wavered. Yoo Je I immediately handed her the prepared supplementary materials. Seul Gi tremblingly accepted, implicitly agreeing to the deal. Without me, you wouldn't be able to prepare for the midterms on your own? She returned to the locker and took the pills. This pill was indeed different from what she usually took. As soon as she swallowed it, a surge of energy rushed to her head. The transfer student from the countryside, in her first exam alongside the elite students, topped the entire school. This infuriated the wealthy students who poured money into expensive tutoring classes each month, only to be beaten by a country bumpkin who had never even heard of such things. Seul Gi saw her and Yoo Je I's names tied for first place, but felt no joy. She knew this achievement was due to hacking the potent brain-boosting pills and supplementary materials from Yoo Je I's tutoring class. Before the exam, Seul Gi had taken just one pill and felt an unprecedented clarity of mind. Starting the exam, she was further surprised to find all the questions were covered in Yoo Je I's supplementary materials. Seul Gi simply copied the memorized answers to achieve a perfect score. She glanced at Yoo Je I, who winked in understanding. By copying the answers, Seul Gi easily completed the exam. As a result, she and Yoo Je I both achieved perfect scores, tying for first place school-wide. Before she could celebrate, Seul Gi was surrounded by suspicious whispers. Everyone knew the exam was based on the tutoring materials, and Seul Gi had never attended such classes. Seul Gi could only lower her head and quietly slip away. At that moment, an uninvited guest approached her, the senior who had sold her the pills earlier. He was looking for someone, a senior close to Seul Gi. Seul Gi had received calls from this senior but blocked her number, wanting to sever ties with her past and avoid the pill-selling senior. So, she lied, claiming ignorance. Unexpectedly, the senior pulled out a knife, threatening her not to lie and not to take him for a fool. He knew Seul Gi's high score was drug-induced and that she had previously hidden a large quantity of his pills. He demanded she repay the money for the pills she had pocketed. He declared he would return next week to collect the money. Seul Gi felt utterly exhausted. Before she could recover from this encounter with the gangster, Seul Gi received another shock from the school. The top 20 students were scheduled for health checkups at Yoo Je I's family's hospital. While usually a benefit, this was a ticking time bomb for Seul Gi. The checkup would undoubtedly reveal her drug use. She rushed to the office to request cancellation, but the teacher's stated refusal would void her exam results. Defeated, Seul Gi gritted her teeth and boarded the bus to the hospital. On the bus, Yoo Je I gestured for her to sit together, but Seul Gi coldly sat in the back. At the hospital, the first step was a urine test. Seul Gi paced nervously in the restroom, with the sample cup when she encountered the girl who had given her the paper crane. "What, feeling guilty?" the girl asked pointedly. Seul Gi clutched the cup, unsure what to do. Just then, Yoo Je I texted, telling her to come to the hospital rooftop, claiming to have something that could help. Seul Gi ran to the rooftop without hesitation, finally realizing she couldn't escape Yoo Je I's control. Yoo Je I stood on the rooftop with her back to Seul Gi. Seul Gi set down the sample cup and knelt before her. "I've been so stupid. From the uniform, the tutoring center, to the midterm exam, you orchestrated everything just to make me kneel before you, and I didn't even realize it and resisted you. Now, whatever you want, I'll do it." Yoo Je I then asked Seul Gi what she wanted. Seul Gi assumed Yoo Je I wanted her stepmother to agree to a settlement, so she offered to persuade her in exchange for help passing the health checkup. Unexpectedly, Yoo Je I stated a settlement was the last thing she wanted. Seul Gi pleaded with Yoo Je I for help. She couldn't lose her chance at Korea University because of this checkup. Yoo Je I stepped forward and handed Seul Gi a different sample cup. "I've always tried to keep you safe, even now." Seul Gi quickly took it. Yoo Je I continued, expressing her pleasure at sharing first place with Seul Gi. "Woo Seul Gi, Yoo Je I. Our names side by side. Feels good, doesn't it?" Seul Gi remembered their prior agreement. Yoo Je I had to reveal how she obtained Seul Gi's information and her purpose for doing so. Seul Gi suspected ulterior motives. Yoo Je I explained she saw the information in her father's office. She knew her father was collecting information for the lawsuit, which was normal. However, the amount of information regarding Seul Gi and her stepmother was excessive. Yoo Je I suspected her father had another agenda and copied all the documents. Seul Gi remained skeptical, but Yoo Je I had helped her with the test, and she had promised to obey her, so she agreed to maintain a tentative friendship. They returned to the hospital and, along with the other students, experienced a deep sleep. Hours later, Yoo Je I woke up first and discovered Ye Ri had stolen Seul Gi's locker key and left. She tried to follow but was stopped by a nurse. Yoo Je I immediately texted Ra, instructing her to follow Ye Ri and report everything. That evening was the annual school festival. All the characters in the story were present, including the pill-selling senior who was blackmailing Seul Gi. He disguised himself as a high school student to infiltrate the school and demand money from Seul Gi. Seul Gi and Yoo Je I enjoyed the festivities. Yoo Je I took Seul Gi to meet the short-haired girl's mother. They ate barbecue and drank Coca-Cola at her stall. Yoo Je I's father saw this and scolded her for eating junk food, but Seul Gi retorted, leaving him speechless in anger, much to Yoo Je I's amusement. Ra texted, reporting that Ye Ri was carrying an unknown phone, frantically searching for a charger. Yoo Je I told her to keep watching and identify the phone's owner. Ye Ri took the phone to the restroom and, finding the girl with bangs there, offered to introduce her to a handsome guy in exchange for finding a compatible charger. Eyes lighting up at the mention of a handsome guy, the girl with bangs rushed to the academic building, rummaging through everyone's bags for a charger. Ye Ri wandered the school with the phone. Near the dating booth, she bumped into the short-haired girl and excitedly pushed her inside, insistent on introducing her to a 1.8 met tall athlete. Instead, she accidentally pushed the pill-selling senior into the dating booth with the short-haired girl. They were separated by a wall, unable to see each other. The senior spotted the short-haired girl through a small window and gave her a pain relief patch with a number sequence written on it. When she questioned it, he told her to ask Seul Gi from class 12 if she wanted more. Then, he left. Outside, Ye Ri found a compatible charger under a table and plugged in the phone. As she left, the short-haired girl asked for the senior's number, but Ye Ri claimed not to know him. Sensing something was amiss, the short-haired girl called Seul Gi, but she didn't answer. Seul Gi and Yoo Je I were enjoying each other's company. Ra continued to follow Ye Ri, observing her entering and exiting the dating booth without the phone. Then, Ye Ri received a call and went to the parking lot to meet someone, Yoo Je I's father. Ra quickly hid nearby to film and eavesdrop. It turned out Yoo Je I's father had made a deal with Ye Ri, steal Seul Gi's phone in exchange for support and a large sum of money. Ye Ri had stolen a phone at the hospital, but it wasn't the one Seul Gi usually used. Opening it, she discovered it belonged to the deceased test writer. In other words, Yoo Je I's father wanted her to steal the deceased teacher's belongings. Despite not knowing the connection between Seul Gi and the teacher, Ye Ri used this stolen item to blackmail Yoo Je I's father, who agreed in order to retrieve the phone. Ye Ri happily returned to the booth to collect the phone. Ra immediately sent the video to Yoo Je I, informing her the phone belonged to the deceased teacher and was currently charging in the dating booth. Upon seeing the video, Yoo Je I immediately left Seul Gi to retrieve the phone. As soon as she left, the short-haired girl arrived, complaining about Seul Gi not answering her calls. Seul Gi opened her bag, discovered her father's phone was missing, and frantically began searching. Yoo Je I reached the booth, grabbed the phone, and hid in the restroom to examine it. When Ye Ri returned, the phone was gone. The girl with bangs arrived, excitedly demanding her introduction to the handsome guy. Annoyed, Ye-ri brushed her aside to search for the phone. On the phone, Yoo Je I found a video her father had sent to Seul Gi's father. In the video, two shabbily dressed individuals were Yoo Je I's older sister and Seul Gi's father. Yoo Je I was completely shocked. Her sister hadn't been home in a long time. Her father had claimed her sister was studying elsewhere after failing to get into university. Now, it seemed he had lied. What had happened to her sister? Yoo Je I cross-referenced the video and identified the room. As she searched for clues, she heard a scream from downstairs. The girl with bangs, enraged at being tricked by Ye-ri, was cornering her with a knife. "You delusional, paranoid bitch! That's why Yoo Je I stopped hanging out with you." In the ensuing struggle, the girl with bangs injured Ye-ri's hand with the knife and then lunged at Seul Gi, injuring her arm and knocking her to the ground. Seeing this, Yoo Je I's father showed a subtle smile. As Yoo Je I started to go, downstairs someone entered. Yoo Je I froze. The person removed their hoodie, revealing Yoo Je I's long-lost sister. In order to gain attention from her parents and younger sister, the girl prayed to God to contract a terminal illness. God heard her prayer and granted her narcolepsy. She thought that from then on, her family would love and take care of her. However, her father became extremely angry about her condition because narcolepsy severely affected her math grades. This was unacceptable to a father who demanded his daughter achieve perfect scores in all subjects. Yoo Je I feared being abandoned by her father, so to achieve perfect scores in math, she risked expulsion by stealing the exam paper. As she found the exam, the teacher who prepared it caught her. Since it was her first offense, the teacher advised her to correct her mistake. Unexpectedly, Yoo Je I's father recorded this scene on his phone and, even more shockingly, used the video to threaten the teacher. Shortly after, the teacher suddenly passed away, and Yoo Je I mysteriously disappeared. Yoo Je I accidentally found the teacher's phone and discovered a sensitive video of her sister and the teacher. Yoo Je I suddenly appeared, demanding that Yoo Je I hand over the phone. Yoo Je I refused, leading to a struggle that caused the phone to fall to the ground. Yoo Je I, ignoring the danger, jumped from the upper floor to retrieve the phone, but failed to find it and was instead caught by security. To avoid exposing her identity, she had no choice but to flee. Eventually, Yoo Je I found the phone in the bushes. She hid it and intended to return to look for Seul Gi, only to discover that all the school gates had been locked, with an announcement instructing all students to return to their classrooms for further instructions. Yoo Je I followed a male student to climb over the school wall. Meanwhile, Yoo Je I returned to the school festival and asked her short-haired friend what had happened. The friend revealed that Seul Gi had just been stabbed by Beom-soo and was being taken to the hospital by Yoo Je I's father. Upon hearing this, Yoo Je I's face turned pale, fearing that her father would harm Seul Gi. She immediately climbed over the school wall and ran straight to the hospital. Inside the school, an inspection of students' belongings began, as Beom-soo claimed she had used stimulants, leading to her uncontrolled actions. To cover up the incident, the principal ordered the homeroom teachers to confiscate all prohibited items found. Yoo Je I's short-haired friend was dissatisfied with how the school handled the situation, so she secretly hid the weapon and planned to report it to the police. However, her mother caught her on the way home, scolded her for interfering in others' affairs, and took the weapon away. At the hospital, Yoo Je I saw her father stitching Seul Gi's wound. She approached Seul Gi and gently held her hand, feeling reassured that Seul Gi was still alive. However, her father coldly ordered Yoo Je I to stitch Seul Gi's wound herself, saying that it would be useful for her when applying to medical school. Yoo Je I stared at her father, unable to read his thoughts. Then, she put on the gloves he had prepared and stitched Seul Gi's wound herself. After treating Seul Gi, Yoo Je I returned home exhausted. At that moment, a Ra called, fearful of being caught for selling drugs with Yoo Je I. Yoo Je I blamed a Ra for conducting direct transactions with Beom-soo, which led to the current situation. Since things had already happened, they only needed to stay silent and no one would find out about their involvement. However, a Ra was worried that Seul Gi knew about their drug dealings. "Didn't you sell drugs to Seul Gi directly? Can she be trusted? If she talks, we're both finished," a Ra said. Frustrated, Yoo Je I threw her phone down. She needed to test Seul Gi's reaction. A video of Beom-soo stabbing Seul Gi was unexpectedly leaked online, causing a public uproar. Rumors spread that the school's graduation rate was due to students collectively using drugs. When Seul Gi woke up, she also saw the video. At that moment, Yoo Je I brought fruit to visit her in the hospital. As soon as she saw Yoo Je I, Seul Gi asked if she had seen her other phone. Yoo Je I pretended not to know. Seul Gi explained that it was her father's phone, and she had lost it before unlocking it. She then asked if Yoo Je I knew her father. Yoo Je I admitted she knew him but had never been in his class. Furthermore, rumors had circulated in the school that Seul Gi's father had inappropriate relationships with students. "That can't be true. I'll pretend I didn't hear that." "Why?" Isn't that better? At least it's less painful than believing your father's actually a good person, Yoo Je I said. Hearing this, Seul Gi became furious and stormed off, leaving Yoo Je I behind. However, the hospital's doors were locked. Seul Gi searched for an emergency exit and unexpectedly saw Yoo Je I's father and several staff members carrying a suspicious body bag into a vehicle. After they left, Seul Gi returned to the hospital. At that moment, a senior called, asking if she knew the whereabouts of an upperclassman. Seul Gi was about to respond when she noticed another identical body bag. As she approached, a foot protruded from the bag. She was terrified. Just then, Yoo Je I's father suddenly appeared behind her. Panicked, she tried to flee but found the door locked. Yoo Je I's father calmly explained that these were unclaimed bodies he was responsible for, burying and occasionally used for practice. After speaking, he unlocked the door and allowed her to leave the surgical room. After arguing with Seul Gi at the hospital, Yoo Je I returned home. On the way, she was unexpectedly ambushed and captured by her sister. Yoo Je Na demanded she hand over the teacher's phone, intending to use the video as evidence that their father had killed the teacher. Yoo Je I was shocked to learn that her father had indeed committed murder. Yoo Je Na stated she could testify to it and needed the phone as proof, promising the teacher's family the truth. Yoo Je I agreed to hand it over, but only at the right moment. She gave Yoo Je Na another phone to stay in contact. The next day, Seul Gi was discharged and returned to school, unaware that the police had arrived to investigate the attack. One by one, the students were interrogated. As soon as Seul Gi arrived, the homeroom teacher took her to the office, where Beom-su's family and their lawyer were waiting. Instead of apologizing, they used their influence to pressure Seul Gi, an orphan, into settling. Seul Gi had no choice but to call her stepmother to the school. Her stepmother stood firmly by her side, refusing to agree to a settlement. Seeing this, Beom-su's family accused Seul Gi of selling drugs. The homeroom teacher sided with them, blaming Seul Gi. Although Seul Gi and her stepmother denied it, no one believed them. The principal even threatened to expel Seul Gi if she did not confess. At that moment, the police took Seul Gi in for questioning. She hoped they would listen to her explanation, but instead, they suspected her of stealing drugs from the hospital, as security footage showed her near the pharmacy. Seul Gi realized that the person who reported her might be Yoo Je I, who had previously directed her past the pharmacy to reach the rooftop. Feeling betrayed, she accused Yoo Je I and A Ra as the real drug dealers. The school received the police report, but only summoned A Ra for questioning, not daring to touch Yoo Je I. A Ra informed Yoo Je I of Seul Gi's accusation. However, Yoo Je I was unfazed, believing she could handle everything. But unexpectedly, her father acted faster, seemingly planning to sacrifice Seul Gi to settle everything. Realizing that her father might expel Seul Gi and ruin her future, Yoo Je I decided to talk to her. However, Seul Gi wanted nothing to do with her anymore. At that moment, a senior unexpectedly appeared in the classroom looking for Seul Gi. He explained that he had no other way to repay his debts and had heard that the drug dealer in the Seoul area was a high school girl, so he wanted to take over her business. He asked Seul Gi if she had ever bought drugs in Seoul. Seul Gi admitted that she had, but she did not reveal that the seller was Yoo Je I. The senior then forced Seul Gi to help him identify the seller, and she had no choice but to comply by using her account to contact the seller. At school, the senior informed her that the seller had arranged a transaction at locker number 4 in the subway station. Seul Gi received the message with great anxiety, as she wasn't sure whether the person involved was ARA or Yoo Je I. After school, she and the senior went to the subway station. The senior followed Seul Gi, intent on catching the seller. Meanwhile, ARA confessed to Yoo Je I that she had accepted Seul Gi's order and had even called the police to arrest Seul Gi. She planned to frame Seul Gi for drug dealing. Enraged by this revelation, Yoo Je I grabbed ARA's phone and dashed straight to the subway station. On her way there, Yoo Je I devised a plan. She texted her sister, instructing her to go to locker number 4 at the subway station to retrieve the teacher's phone. After confirming with her own eyes that her sister had entered the subway station, Yoo Je I used ARA's phone to message the senior, changing the meeting point to locker number 8. At that moment, Seul Gi had already arrived at locker number 4, and the senior quickly urged her to move to locker number 8. No sooner had Seul Gi left than the senior saw Yoo Je Na opening locker number 4. Finding no phone inside, Yoo Je Na fled the station. Suspecting that she was the seller, the senior chased after her. Meanwhile, Seul Gi reached locker number 8, where Yoo Je I suddenly appeared and dragged her away. On the other side, the senior pursued Yoo Je Na out of the station and witnessed her being forcefully taken onto an ambulance by 2 nurses. To his further astonishment, he also saw Yoo Je I's father riding along in the ambulance. On the subway train, Yoo Je I admitted that it was A-Ra's trap. At that moment, Seul Gi realized she had narrowly escaped death. She also confessed to Seul Gi that a senior had forced her to buy drugs. Then, the two returned to locker number 4. Yoo Je I found that the drugs in the locker had vanished and immediately assumed that her sister had been arrested by the police. Seul Gi worried for Yoo Je I, believing that she had been wrongfully arrested. Yoo Je I went further to claim that she had deliberately lured her sister into getting arrested because their father was always searching for her. If arrested, her sister could evade him. However, when they arrived at the police station, they learned that Yoo Je I had not been arrested at all. In other words, Yoo Je I was missing once again. Fortunately, Yoo Je I had installed a tracking application on her sister's phone. She checked the tracker and saw that her sister was at home, but when she ran there, her sister's room was empty. She tried calling her sister, and the ringtone echoed from inside the room. Returning inside, she found the phone, but no sign of her sister, only an open window. While Yoo Je I was closing the window, her father suddenly entered, startling her. Luckily, he only asked a few questions before leaving, and Yoo Je I had no idea where her sister had gone. It wasn't until the next day that Chaehwa discovered Seul Gi had not been arrested. To protect herself, Chaehwa had posted a video online of Yoo Je I forcing a former deskmate to kneel in the restroom, while also insinuating that Yoo Je I was the school's drug ring leader. The video spread throughout the school, yet Yoo Je I remained completely unconcerned. At that moment, the police arrived at the school to investigate the illegal drug deal that had taken place at the subway station the previous day. They released surveillance footage showing Yoo Je I appearing at locker number 4. According to a tip from an anonymous source, the police stated that the girl in the video was from this school and urged students to identify and locate her. Suddenly, Yoo Je I had an idea. She stood up and declared that the person in the surveillance footage was her sister, Yoo Je I. The entire school was abuzz. Yoo Je I further claimed that she had seen Yoo Je I numerous times stealing drugs from their father's hospital and sneaking into the school to sell drugs to Seoul. After that day's school festival, Yoo Je I had vanished. Yoo Je I then pleaded with the police to quickly find her sister. Basing their investigation on Yoo Je I's testimony, the police naturally began by questioning her father. Seul Gi, curious about why Yoo Je I was blaming Yoo Je I, asked her about it. Yoo Je I explained that doing so could not only exonerate Seul Gi, but also prompt the police to search for her sister. She then took Seul Gi to the surveillance room in an effort to find clues about her sister from the camera footage. To hand over to the police, she quickly found a video of her sister. However, to her surprise, the video revealed that her sister had been seen that night with the short-haired friend. Without delay, Yoo Je I and Seul Gi went to find the short-haired friend to inquire about the conversation's details. They followed her, only to be astonished when she arrived at Seul Gi's house. The two intercepted the short-haired friend and bluntly asked her why she was there. She remained silent. In truth, that night, Yoo Je I had asked her whether she was acquainted with Seul Gi, the daughter of the teacher who prepared the exam. The clever, short-haired friend immediately realized that Yoo Je I was connected to the teacher's medical lawsuit. Not only did Yoo Je I not deny it, but she also recounted many details to the short-haired friend and even requested that she keep their conversation a secret. As a result, the short-haired friend did not divulge any information to Yoo Je I, leaving Yoo Je I at a loss as to what to do next. At that very moment, Yoo Je I received a mysterious phone call. The caller, using a voice that had been digitally altered, told Yoo Je I that he knew where Yoo Je I was and that if Yoo Je I brought the drugs to a certain bar, he would reveal her sister's location. Upon hearing this, both Seul Gi and the short-haired friend wanted to join. They agreed that the three of them could combine forces to apprehend this mysterious individual. Finding the idea appealing, the trio went to Yoo Je I's house to change outfits before heading to the bar, blending in with the crowd. Following instructions, Seul Gi placed the drugs inside the women's restroom and then stayed there to wait for the person coming to collect them. To guard against the possibility of accomplices, Yoo Je I went up to the second floor to keep watch. A few minutes later, a man wearing a red hat entered the restroom. After he left, Seul Gi signaled the short-haired friend to wait in the women's restroom while she and Yoo Je I trailed the red-hatted man. The man ascended to the second floor, and Yoo Je I immediately gave chase. When Seul Gi reached the second floor, she saw that Yoo Je I had been detained by the senior. Meanwhile, the short-haired friend inside the restroom had also caught the person who came to pick up the drugs. To her surprise, that person turned out to be Ye Ri. The moment Yoo Je I saw Ye Ri, she immediately realized that Ye Ri knew nothing about her sister's whereabouts. Yoo Je I asked Ye Ri if her father was behind this incident. Ye Ri admitted that ever since the failed attempt to steal the teacher's phone, Yoo Je I's father had lost trust in her. This time, she added that she had heard from Seoul that Yoo Je I and her father were both searching for Yoo Je I. Consequently, she lied and claimed that she knew where Yoo Je I was, in order to extort money since her family was bankrupt and in desperate need of cash. Seul Gi then asked Ye Ri if she knew anything about that phone. Ye Ri replied that she only knew it had been taken by someone during the school festival. At that moment, the senior also arrived. Upon seeing a photo of Yoo Je I, he recalled that The girl who had climbed walls with him on the night of the school festival was none other than Yoo Je I. Yoo Je I had dropped her ID, and the senior discovered that it was a fake ID, the very one he had used to buy drugs for his underclassmen. Earlier, several dozen of his fake IDs had been confiscated by an upperclassmate. That was why he had asked Seul Gi about the whereabouts of that upperclassmate. It seemed that the upperclassmate had sold the fake ID to Yoo Je I. Seul Gi interrupted, the senior pulling him aside. She knew that he had encountered Yoo Je I at the subway station. The senior then explained that he had indeed seen Yoo Je I being taken into an ambulance. He added that if Seul Gi wanted to know where the ambulance was headed, she would have to cooperate with him to take over Yoo Je I's drug distribution network. He had deduced that Yoo Je I was the high school drug kingpin. Before Seul Gi could reply, Yoo Je I received a phone call from her father saying that he had found her sister's corpse. Yoo Je I, Seul Gi, and the senior immediately rushed to the hospital. The senior went to the hospital to find Yoo Je I's ward, while Yoo Je I and Seul Gi headed to the morgue. There, Yoo Je I's face was found to be horribly disfigured. The forensic examiner reported that she had died from a fall from a height, with her head striking the ground. Seul Gi then noticed the familiar scar and the layer of nail polish on Yoo Je I's leg. In Yoo Je I's ward, the senior discovered dozens of his own fake IDs along with a flyer advertising a prep academy. The next day at school, Seul Gi recalled that Yoo Je I's foot was identical to that of the corpse she had seen at the hospital. Recalling that Yoo Je I's father had demanded a reconciliation the previous day, she began to suspect that the corpse might not be Yoo Je I. At that moment, rumors began circulating throughout the school that Yoo Je I had killed her sister. Seul Gi immediately refuted these claims. Ra, noticing that Seul Gi was defending Yoo Je I, bluntly told her that it was in fact Yoo Je I who had taken the exam-setting teacher's phone. Seul Gi promptly went to Yoo Je I's house. After Seul Gi explained her reasons for coming, Yoo Je I took out a box. Seul Gi opened it and found 2 keychains from a Korean university. Yoo Je I explained that she had intended to use them to store the phone, but yesterday she discovered that the phone had disappeared and she did not know who had taken it. Dejected, Seul Gi rummaged through the entire room. Yoo Je I then moved to embrace Seul Gi, confessing that she felt deeply guilty. If only she had found her sister sooner, she believed that her sister wouldn't have died. Seul Gi eventually calmed down and consoled Yoo Je I, assuring her that it wasn't her fault. Seul Gi also chose not to mention her suspicion that Yoo Je I might still be alive. After leaving Yoo Je I's house, Seul Gi decided to search for the upperclassmate, since she had sold a fake ID to Yoo Je I and might know where Yoo Je I was. Based on the upperclassmate's social media activity, Seul Gi went to the rehabilitation center where the upperclassmate had last been seen, only to learn that she had left there and gone to a prep academy. However, when Seul Gi arrived at the prep academy, she received news that the upperclassmate had died a month ago. That day, a man who looked like a thug had come to settle all of the upperclassmate's rental fees and debts. Just as Seul Gi was about to ask the landlord for more details, she unexpectedly encountered Ye and the short-haired friend. They had just discovered that Yoo Je I had once been in room 209 of the prep academy. It turned out that the short-haired friend had been directly admitted into a Korean university, and her teacher had warned her to be careful and not to leave any traces. She recalled that 2 years ago, after doing something she shouldn't have, at school, she had hurriedly sneaked into the surveillance room to delete that day's video. She remembered that she wasn't the only one at school that day. She had accidentally discovered Yoo Je I and the exam-setting teacher involved in a scandalous affair in the printing room. Just as she was about to delete her video, Ye caught her. The short-haired friend had no choice but to honestly explain why she had gone into the surveillance room. Ye said little and directly helped her delete the video, but he was also surprised that the short-haired friend knew about the relationship between Yoo Je I and the teacher, yet had kept it hidden until now. Ye further revealed that Su had once seen Yoo Je I hiding something in the laboratory on the day of the school festival. Therefore, Ye wanted to find that item, thinking it might uncover an earth-shattering secret. After saying that, the two went to the laboratory and soon found a scrap of paper reading 209 Prep Academy and a key. They then headed to the Prep Academy and happened to run into Seul Gi. The 3 of them together opened the door to room 209 of Yoo Je I. All 3 quickly explored the secrets of room 209. The 4 walls were covered with mathematical formulas, surely written and memorized daily by Jaehna. On the table lay something significant, prompting Seul Gi to figure out how to open it. It turned out to be Jaehna's diary, filled with daily entries from her college entrance exam days. She had been wholeheartedly encouraged by her juniors, though Jae, her younger sister, always looked at her with cold eyes. Yoo Je I was obsessed, determined not to let herself, as the older sister, be outdone by her younger sibling. She also longed to regain her father's affection, which led her to recklessly steal the math exam questions. As a result, she had to repay her teacher with her body and beg him to turn a blind eye. When Jaehna's father discovered the illicit relationship between his daughter and Seul Gi's father, instead of scolding her, he praised her profusely. He personally approached Seul Gi's father with a deal. If he leaked the national exam questions, Jaehna's father would help find Seul Gi, the daughter he had lost 13 years ago. Tormented by the pain of losing his child, Seul Gi's father, despite remarrying, refused to have more children. His stepmother, therefore, devoted herself to searching for Seul Gi, hoping her husband would change his mind and have a child with her. By chance, Yoo Je I learned of this and quietly lent a hand. A few days later, Jaehna's father devised a despicable plan to oust Ms. Kim from the exam drafting committee. Naturally, Seul Gi's father took her place and boarded a vehicle headed straight to an isolated center, cut off from the outside world. There, they ate, slept, and drafted the exam questions to prevent leaks. On the way, Seul Gi's father received a message from Jaehna's father claiming he had found Seul Gi. If he wanted a father-daughter reunion, he had to follow the plan. Moreover, blackmailed with a video of his illicit affair with the student, Seul Gi's father had no choice but to comply. His task was to hide the exam questions inside a capsule, swallow it, and feign a medical emergency requiring hospitalization. The plan went off without a hitch. Seul Gi's father passed out and was rushed into surgery. The assistant performing the operation was none other than Yoo Je I. Swiftly, she extracted the capsule and left the room. Back in the present, everyone gathered at the hospital to prepare for Yoo Je I's funeral. However, Seul Gi and Yoo Je I knew the truth. Jaehna wasn't dead. The body had an old burn scar on its foot, clearly not Jaehna's. Seul Gi revealed that the corpse belonged to a senior acquaintance named Choi, an orphan who coincidentally rented the room next to Jaehna's old place. Jae Yi's father had a hobby of collecting unidentified corpses to hone his surgical skills. He easily deceived everyone, swapping in another body to fool the authorities. Thus, Jaehna was truly alive, though her whereabouts remained unknown. Still, Jae Yi believed her father was too dangerous, with too many schemes, and thought it best to pretend ignorance. But Seul Gi wasn't satisfied. She had read Jaehna's diary and uncovered the real reason behind her father's death, vowing to find evidence to unravel the mystery. With that, the pair split up to act discreetly. Jae Yi, using her status as the young mistress, entered the security room and disabled the cameras, fabricating a story that her sister's body was being prepared for burial that day and she wanted privacy, avoiding recordings to ward off bad luck. Afterward, she returned to the living room to greet relatives. Everyone gossiped about Jae Yi's father, a skilled doctor who couldn't save his own daughter. Meanwhile, Seul Gi, armed with Jaehna's diary as her guide, infiltrated the clinic and collected all the X-ray images. This was the room where Yoo Je I had recorded the stolen exam questions from the capsule. Jae Yi suddenly appeared, offering to help solve the problem, but Jaehna flew into a rage, shouting and driving her away. Jaehna was haunted, constantly fearing her father would catch her, seeing his shadow everywhere. After rummaging around, Seul Gi lucked out, finding an X-ray of her father with the capsule in his stomach. In a fit of anger, Seul Gi grabbed a knife to confront Jaehna's father, only for her stepmother to intervene. It turned out the stepmother had long known about her husband's shady relationship with Jaehna. Once, while washing his clothes, she found a flirtatious note in his pocket. Jaehna's frequent lurking around the house only fueled her suspicions. After her husband's death, she received several anonymous letters, suspecting Jaehna was sending a message. Framing Seul Gi for selling drugs was merely a ploy to force the stepmother into a compromise, avoiding legal action. After Jaehna's supposed burial, Seul Gi rushed to a senior's car to talk. He too knew the body was Choi's, a stand-in. This senior had helped Choi settle her debts after her death. However, he couldn't offer more help and wanted no part in the mess. Afterward, Seul Gi and her stepmother handed the X-ray evidence to their lawyer. Yet, it wasn't enough to convict anyone definitively. At most, Jaehna's father could be charged with medical negligence, but proving murder was a stretch. There were no cameras in the operating room and the only ones involved were Jaehna and her father. The stepmother provided the anonymous letters, suspecting another witness knew of her husband's death. With so few clues, only Jaehna herself coming forward could turn the tide. Unbeknownst to them, Jae Yi had secretly recorded their conversation. That night, Gyeong and her mother had a heated argument. The short-haired girl accused her mother of being a fake lawyer who cared nothing for her children or the medical mishap. Sobbing, she confessed that 2 years ago, while studying at school, she accidentally witnessed her teacher in a live adult video. Now, she felt overwhelming guilt, believing she was tied to Jaehna's death. Her mother forbade her from speaking, a word, warning it could bring harm. Meanwhile, Jae Yi sold drugs to an addict and met the senior. They struck a deal. She'd supply illegal drugs and he'd provide the recording, a mutually profitable exchange. The senior handed the recording to Jaehna's father, unaware that Seul Gi was secretly tailing him. Suddenly, a hand reached out, covering Seul Gi's mouth and dragging her away. It was none other than Jae Yi. Earlier, they had discussed Jaehna's diary over the phone, which revealed that Jaehna had secretly filmed everything in the operating room. Knowing Je I had sneakily recorded them, Seul Gi turned the tables, luring Jaena's father into a trap. They had to bring down this villain by any means necessary. The pair pretended to search for the video everywhere, hoping to rattle Jaena's father. Sure enough, he preemptively went to Jaena's old apartment and cleaned it out. Meanwhile, Je I discreetly planted listening devices around the house, even on the dog's collar. After days of grueling effort, Je I finally overheard a conversation between her parents. Her father admitted that if the video of Seul Gi's father's surgery leaked, it would ruin everything. Her mother, indifferent to her husband's or children's fates, demanded plane tickets to flee abroad. That night, the duo borrowed a car from their short-haired friend to tail the parents. Je I asked her friend to tell the lawyer that Jaehna would testify in court the next morning. They tracked the mother from the city center to the outskirts for hours, unsure of her destination. Growing anxious with only minutes until the trial, the lawyer pleaded with the jury to wait for a key witness who had been in the operating room during Seul Gi's father's surgery. Fortunately, the judge agreed to grant more time. Jaena's father remained unfazed, as if he already knew the outcome. After a fruitless day, Seul Gi realized she'd been duped. The mother had gone to an orphanage to visit children. She called the lawyer to apologize, admitting she couldn't bring the witness as promised. Disappointment clouded everyone's faces. Another trial had failed. Still, Je I held Seul Gi's hand, offering comfort. Halfway back, Jaena's father summoned Je I home. After all, they weren't on the same side. The stepmother grew suspicious and warned Seul Gi not to trust Je I too much. Their plan had been progressing smoothly, only to fall apart at the last moment. Jaena's father had been worried about the video, yet he showed no fear in court, suggesting he knew they couldn't produce Jaehna. Seul Gi stubbornly insisted she hadn't misplaced her trust. At that moment, Jaena's father showed Je I live footage of Seul Gi and her stepmother driving. The stepmother wondered why he hadn't performed the surgery alone that day instead of involving Jaehna. Surely he could have retrieved the exam and given it to his daughter himself. Mid-conversation, a near-fatal car accident almost claimed their lives. Seul Gi broke down in tears, realizing Jaena's father had her completely cornered. Later, he took Je I to Jaena's hiding place. Jaena's leg was fitted with a tracking device. Stepping beyond its range would trigger a blaring alarm. Then, Jaena's father dropped a bombshell. It was Jaehna who had injected the drug that killed Seul Gi's father on the operating table. He had feared the video would harm his daughter, but he himself had done nothing wrong, only cleaned up the mess Jaehna left behind. Now, he had erased part of Jaehna's memory, leaving her dazed and confused. Je I was stunned, unable to believe what she'd heard. She had fought her father, convinced he was a murderer, only for the truth to flip entirely. He explained he'd done it to protect her from ruin, ensuring she remained his only pride. Tearfully, Je I turned away, promising not to disappoint him. Elsewhere, the stepmother took the car for repairs and learned the tire had been deliberately slashed, causing the accident. Luckily, their lives were spared, or they'd have been long gone. To ease Seul Gi's worries, she lied, saying the tire had worn out naturally and was scrapped for a new one. The next morning, the teacher announced the semester exam schedule, urging students to study hard. Je I took a sick day, leaving Seul Gi deeply concerned. She called repeatedly, but the line was always busy. Wandering their usual hangouts, Seul Gi searched for Je I in vain. Desperate, she went to her house and rang the bell, but no one answered. A hunch led her to the hospital, where she spotted Je I and her father talking upstairs from the lobby. Rushing up, she was stopped by the manager. Group study was in session, and outsiders weren't allowed. Waiting on the rooftop for an hour, Seul Gi worried about Je I's health, only to be doused with cold water. Je I laid her cards on the table. She'd never seen Seul Gi as a friend or sister. In this school, only one could reign supreme. Years ago, Je I had rejoiced when her sister failed the college entrance exam, losing her top spot. Her chance had come, and she'd stop at nothing to claim it. She admitted to selling drugs to Seul Gi, stealing her father's phone, and orchestrating the body swap. All her doing. Laughing triumphantly, Je I reveled in her masterful deception. Her final words, "I'm warning you. Stop digging for the truth. Your family can't beat mine." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Seul Gi rooted to the spot, seething in silence. Casting aside her days of sorrow, Seul Gi focused on studying for the upcoming exam. The pills that helped her concentrate had run out, leaving her foggy and at times hallucinating that her feet were floating above the ground. During the exam, she poured every ounce of effort into her work, but the results were far from satisfactory. While her classmates submitted their papers, she toiled on, begging for more time. When the scores were released, Gyong made a stunning climb to the top spot in the school. The homeroom teacher praised her, saying that as long as Gyong maintained her form, she'd surely pass the medical university entrance exam. Students with lower marks were reminded to try harder, or their college dreams would remain out of reach. Another vital exam still lay ahead, and the teacher hoped her students would keep pushing forward. Jae-yi brought her report card home to her father, apologizing for not being number one. He didn't even glance at it. Tossing it straight into the fire, Jae-yi pleaded with him to make her like her sister, insisting she needed a set of extremely difficult questions. Seul Gi was livid when she saw her stepmother buy a new car with the hospital settlement money. Exhausted from endless lawsuits with no results, the stepmother grew increasingly hurt as she uncovered more truths about her late husband. Disheartened, Seul Gi stormed into Jaena's funeral parlor, causing a scene by clutching her urn. Jae-yi's father arrived to sort things out and, unexpectedly, promised Seul Gi a set of ultra-tough college entrance exam questions if she'd stop stirring up trouble. Meanwhile, Gyeong and her mother ventured up a mountain to pray to Buddha, for Gyeong to hold her ranking and pass the medical university exam. On the way back, Gyeong ran into the senior, who gave her some pills to stay sharp. He revealed that Seul Gi's loss of focus and ranking stemmed from running out of drugs. If Gyeong wanted to stay on top, she should use this miracle drug. Elsewhere, Yeri kept dealing pills to the senior. In her free time, she worked at a karaoke bar, catching the eye of a VIP who tempted her. Serve him well, and he'd advance her a month's living expenses. That night, Seul Gi sought out Jae-yi, recounting how her father had promised the tough questions. She wanted to confirm if this was part of Jae-yi's plan. Jae-yi's days of silence had left her frustrated. Jae-yi rushed home, confronting her father about leaking secret questions to an outsider. He was no saint. He feared future trouble and wanted a scapegoat. "Letting Seul Gi handle it directly beats us doing it ourselves," he said. He'd dug into the background of a national university professor drafting the entrance exam, uncovering his ties to a bribery scandal with incriminating photos. Seul Gi was to use this evidence to pressure him. The plan went off smoothly, recorded on camera. As the exam countdown ticked on, everyone prepared frantically. Some built stamina, others secretly took clarity pills. Jae-yi frequented the pool, practicing holding her breath for long stretches. Gyeong, during a mock exam, slipped into the bathroom to relieve herself, a frequent stress coping mechanism. Her loud moans nearly got her caught in the embarrassing act. The next day, Seul Gi distributed college application forms to the class. With only 90 days until the crucial entrance exam, tensions ran high. Her relationship with Jae-yi remained stalled. Every encounter was like oil and water. Gyeong grew more dependent on pills, sneaking purchases from Yeri. Caught red-handed today, the best friends turned foes. Yeri warned Gyeong to abandon her delusions of beating Jae-yi, lest her secrets be exposed. Stung, Gyeong snapped that Yeri was a bar girl whose shame was school-wide gossip. Their argument exploded into hair-pulling and slaps. Yeri seized the pills, crushing them without mercy. Nearby, Seul Gi, throwing out trash, witnessed it all. Later, students gathered in the auditorium for profile photos. Gyeong's sneeze from a dog hair allergy piqued Seul Gi's suspicion. Her family didn't keep pets. That night, visiting Gyeong's house, she spotted Jae-yi's white dog. Jae-yi had once confided her fear that if she died, no one would care for it. Gyeong admitted Jae-yi tutored her in exchange for looking after the dog. Uneasy, Seul Gi raced to the pool to find her friend. Sure enough, Jae-yi stood on the high ledge, ready to jump. Days earlier, Seul Gi had risked her life to force Jae-yi to spill the truth. Unable to swim, she'd nearly drowned but was revived with CPR. Jae-yi had intentionally bombed a test to justify asking her father for tough questions, aiming to find his weakness and make him pay. Unexpectedly, Seul Gi insisted on joining. Though a reluctant pawn, she couldn't let her friend seek revenge alone. Back in the present, Jae-yi revealed her father had a plan B. Beyond sending Seul Gi to blackmail the professor, he'd planted a spy in the exam drafting committee. This year's theft was sharper and more cautious than before. The duo swapped handwritten notes, wary of his ever-present surveillance. Their bond slowly warmed. Jae-yi confessed the pills she sold Seul Gi were just vitamins. She could focus without miracles. Relieved, Seul Gi's feet felt light again, no longer floating. The next morning, she met the senior, learning he'd slashed her stepmother's tires on Jae-yi's father's orders. She pitched a juicier deal, a ledger of local drug sources, rich kids who'd pay top dollar for effective pills. He eagerly agreed, unaware she was secretly photographing every transaction. He kindly shared some profits for her tuition. The exam drafters were under tight isolation and scrutiny. Even a ball kicked out of the secure zone was checked for leaks. But the spy faked an injury during play, landing in the infirmary. He slipped the questions into the female doctor's coat pocket, though getting them out was trickier. She slashed his leg, blood pouring, demanding hospital drugs to prevent necrosis. Jae-yi's father arrived with the meds, quietly retrieving the questions. Too perfect. He didn't know Seul Gi was in the car. Hours earlier, the senior had hijacked an ambulance, posing as the driver to get her there. Soon, they veered onto a deserted road, meeting Jae-yi. The senior urged Seul Gi to keep the questions per the plan. Jae-yi pressed her to hand them over. After a moment, Seul Gi swallowed the capsule. Je I sedated her to retrieve it. With 10 hours until the exam, surgery was inevitable. Je I's father refused, sensing a trap. Je I took the scalpel herself. 2 hours later, she extracted the capsule. But the senior snatched it, auctioning it to a crowd outside. Highest bidder won the brutal questions. Ga Young, seeing blood on the paper, vomited in disgust. The slyest fox was Je I's father. He'd given Je I the real questions in a capsule. The green one from surgery was fake. He bitterly blamed Je I for ruining Seul Gi, not him. Sure enough, the exam matched his questions perfectly. Kids who bought the fake set wailed, chewing pencils. Gyeong flopped, too ashamed to face her mom. Sneaking out the back, she saw Yeri forced into a car by a madam for bar work. Outraged, Gyeong recited criminal law verbatim, scaring the madam into releasing her. The senior met a grim end. Parents ganged up, nailing him for fake questions. Worst off was Seul Gi, unconscious until noon the next day. Waking to the TV, she learned the exam was over. Dejected, she wrote a dropout letter. Her teacher didn't bother asking why, busy honoring Je I, the nationwide top scorer. Seul Gi, stone-faced, packed, and left. Je I's father basked in TV, praise as a tiger father with a tiger child. Unbeknownst to them, Yeri was quietly exposing the valedictorian's secrets. Meanwhile, Je I visited Jaina, wearing a life vest and removing her ankle tracker. "It's time we went far away," she said, live-streaming as she hugged her sister and jumped into the river. Media erupted. The top student had logged out. Police searched for hours, finding only Jaina alive. Seul Gi screamed Je I's name in vain. The next morning, evidence surfaced of Je I's father's illegal surgeries, exam theft, and drug sales. The old surgery on Seul Gi's father resurfaced with video proof. He was arrested on the spot but swore to find Je I. 6 months later, the case lingered. Seul Gi and her stepmother faced relentless reporters. He identified countless bodies, none Je I's. Lacking murder evidence, he walked free months later, visiting Seul Gi daily, convinced Je I would reach out. Yeri's life changed. She quit the trade, though her past occasionally resurfaced. Gyeong pursued law like her mom, fond of self-relief, but dodging suitors like the plague. In the end, Seul Gi vowed to quit drugs and prep for a second entrance exam shot. That night, a gift appeared at her door. A keychain with the medical school logo she'd given Je I. Tears of joy fell as she saw a photo proving Je I lived. Now, near the sea, Je I led a free, unburdened life, quietly cheering Seul Gi towards her medical school dream. The film ends here. See you in the next one.